Selling Marxism has been a tough road to hoe in America, although that's not to say that those selling it haven't made inroads towards getting us there. But our laissez-faire roots and inherent disdain for the anti-freedom control mechanisms needed to sustain outright communism have made it difficult for the peddlers to find the necessary buyers over the years. That's why they've gotten creative in recent decades, finding their magic beans, so to speak, by suggesting that people of color tend to be financially less well off than white people, thereby establishing racial inequality as a substitute for class struggle. Racial variance in levels of income is often the first thing that is referenced. For example, the most common argument is here represented by CNN on June 2021. Quote, the median income of Black Americans in 2019 tied prior highs, according to the most recent U.S. Census Bureau data, but non-Hispanic white Americans saw their median income hit a record thanks to the booming economy. Black workers face significant wage gaps in the labor market, and these differentials have grown since the year 2000, unquote. The intention, of course, like always, is that the reader will assume that this disparity exists primarily due to racial discrimination in our society. Notably missing, however, is literally any other demographic data whatsoever beyond that binary comparison. But as we all know, that's not accidental, now is it? You see, any additional context when it comes to racial or ethnic income disparities make the black and white CNN narrative tumble like a house of cards. Yes, white Americans earn more on average than black Americans. That's a data point, not a story. You see, in reality, there are many other data points to consider beyond this little cherry-picked microcosm of how races and ethnicities financially perform in American life. Indian Americans, or South Asians, for example, are the highest earning ethnic group in America, followed closely by Japanese and/or Chinese Americans, or East Asians. All of these groups of Americans out-earn white Americans on average, and if you haven't noticed, their skin color is distinctly darker than white Americans, along with other features that would tip off their non-whiteness to supposed racist employers. Well, now that's evidence of institutional racism, right? If a disparity in income amongst whites and blacks suggests institutional oppression, then why is that not the case when whites could be perceived as the victims of it? After all, don't financial outcomes among racial demographics suggest racial discrimination in society at large? Indian American households earn tens of thousands of dollars more on average than white American households. So, is there a systemic bias favoring Indian Americans over white Americans because of their skin color? Well, honestly, sensible people would scoff at such a suggestion, given so little evidence. Clearly, the logic undergirding the Group A earns less on average than Group B, therefore Group A is the victim of discrimination argument doesn't hold up for even a moment of the slightest scrutiny. But there is a correlation that is unmistakable, however, and which may give us some insight into income disparities among racial and ethnic groups. The most fundamental reason for this disparity has been observed for all of human history. But take this semi-contemporary observation from a century and a half ago. Quote, "It is easier," reportedly said American hero and former slave Frederick Douglass, "to build strong children than to repair broken men," unquote. That's true among all human beings, irrespective of race. This is why the primary purpose of all civilizations throughout human history has been to structure their societies in such a way that children would best become productive citizens. And the very best way to do this without the slightest observable variance over millennia is to have children reared by their own mothers and fathers. Also, incidentally, this is the reason that no society in human history has codified laws allowing for same-sex marriage until such a law appeared in the Netherlands in 2001. Just saying. Mothers and fathers each offer unique value in raising children, largely due to the difference between the sexes that the progressive left has decided to ignore, to put it lightly, these past few years. Again, just saying. Anyways, boys in particular need fathers to temper aggressive impulses and focus their energies on productive pursuits. It's really no secret at all that prisons are largely populated by men. It's no coincidence that it has been observed that 85% of youths in prison come from fatherless homes. This has created a vicious cycle of children from fatherless homes committing crimes and going to prison after having procreated. I say procreated because fathering doesn't seem the appropriate term for such men, leaving their own children fatherless and their sons often doomed to the same fate. This cycle has most acutely affected Black Americans. The high level of Black incarceration again prompts progressives to suggest that because more Black Americans are in prison than white Americans, this somehow signifies systemic racism rather than the much simpler and infinitely provable conclusion that Black Americans commit significantly more crimes per capita than Americans of other races. Fatherlessness and its ruinous outcomes are certainly not a natural feature of the Black family in America. As the late Walter E. Williams observed, in 1960, just 22% of Black children were raised in single-parent families. Today, that figure is over 70%. Amongst other things, this busts yet another myth often promoted by the left, which is that fatherlessness and the resulting high level of Black incarceration and poverty is the legacy of slavery. Williams rhetorically asks, quote, "Was the increase in single-parent Black families after 1960 a legacy of slavery, or might it be the legacy of the welfare state, ushered in by the war on poverty?" Unquote. Well, he certainly has a point, concluding separately that the, quote, "undeniable truth is that neither slavery nor Jim Crow, nor the harshest racism has decimated the Black family the way the welfare state has," unquote. You see, facts are stubborn things, and it is a fact that in the years between 1936 and 1959, the, quote, "income of Blacks relative to whites more than doubled," writes Thomas Sowell. That trajectory cruelly reversed in the 1960s, and the inverse momentum continues to this very day. Speaking broadly, fatherlessness leads to civilizational rot. Intact households with mothers and fathers yield more productive and healthier citizens. Okay, so now once you fully understand that, you should not be surprised to learn that household income levels in America among racial demographics fall precisely in alignment with rates of marriage in those groups. So, South Asian and East Asian households all earn more than white households, which earn more than Hispanic households, which earn more than Black households. Not coincidentally at all, Asian Americans have substantially higher rates of marriage and lower rates of divorce than white Americans, who have a higher rate of marriage than Hispanic Americans, who have a higher rate of marriage than Black Americans. Fewer than 1/3 of Black Americans marry, leading to more widespread fatherlessness, incarceration, and poverty than other racial demographics. The correlation is unmistakable, but imagine being so intellectually and morally bankrupt, so outright evil and misleading to Black folks everywhere, as to see all of this easily recognizable evidence, yet still try to argue that white people earn more than Black people, therefore more racism. When you see the way these evil, vile people manipulate that one particular demographic so ruthlessly, you can almost understand the riots in the streets. They're just blaming the wrong damn people, and of course, for all the wrong reasons. Most of this came by way of The American Thinker. If you liked it, hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't. Leave a comment down below. There's a PayPal link in the description box, so please put $1 in the bucket on the way out the door. I'd like to thank everyone for all your donations. They're much needed and much appreciated. Now, with all that being said, we'll see you next time.
Come on, move. Move. Easy, easy.